not baths.
Who comes to your house and wants to take a bath?
That's why I don't have
What
any.
kind of house are you running?
I don't have bathtubs. I have showers. Get out. No bathtubs.
Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. Today's episode, the Bengals beat the Chiefs. The college football playoff is set, and Justin Verlander has a new team. But we begin today with the San Francisco 49ers beating the Miami Dolphins 33-17 yesterday and intercepting Tua twice on the way. But there was no particular celebration for the 49ers because Jimmy Garoppolo is now lost for the rest of the season with a broken foot. The 49ers quarterback as of now is Brock Purdy, a rookie out of Iowa State, the last pick in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant. Wilbon, are the 49ers sunk without Garoppolo?
Probably, Tony, because you're looking at, we got to put this in some sort of context. You got the Cowboys and the Eagles and the Cowboys. I mean, that's what you got. And certainly the Rams are done, history. The Giants and the Washington, whatever they are this week, they're not good enough yet. I mean, they may get there in another year, but not right now. And, the Vikings, I don't think you and I, we think they're pretty good, but not good enough. Yeah. So we know we think we know what we're looking at. And, Tony, I don't see the 49ers with a third-string quarterback beating them. Now, I tried to, because, I look at Garoppolo, and I just see passes always thrown too far behind or too high or too low, and he's just the most inaccurate guy. So I think somebody could come in and be pretty average and lead the 49ers, but how far are we talking about? And maybe since Carolina just released a quarterback and put him on the open market, he can do something other than make really funny, smart commercials. Maybe he'll be available and they can have him ready by January 1, but it doesn't look encouraging.
So let me go through this. Brock Purdy was perfectly competent out there.
Yes, he was.
Here are Purdy's numbers yesterday. 25 of 37, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. That's fine. In a caretaker sort of role, like Cooper Rush, he could be just fine, it seems to me. Like, what's that guy, Bailey Zappi? He could do that. But my problem here is the problem that I have with third-string quarterbacks. They're third string for a reason. You go out and you get some tape on this guy, and if you're a good defensive coach, you learn how to deal with him. It's the same problem I have with Mike White of the Jets. Now, look, Mike, I'm the guy who said weeks ago San Francisco was going to be in the Super Bowl, so I'm invested in it. I'm not certain of that now. You had Jimmy G playing, though. You had Jimmy G on the field. Absolutely. Now we're going to see if Kyle Shanahan is a genius, if he's an alchemist, if he can spin straw into gold. The thing about Garoppolo is, I like him more than you, but he's always hurt, Mike. Always played 16 games once. He's Anthony Davis without the high upside. Yeah. And I think they're the best team, but I fear for their ability to get there.
But in a situation where if they got that far and they were facing Dallas or they're facing Philly, you're taking the other team. You're not taking the Niners with a third string guy. Unless he really shows you something between now and the playoffs.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's got a chance.
Beyond the Niners, beyond them, 4 other top contenders put up impressive wins. Joe Burrow and the Bengals beat the Chiefs. I had that. The Eagles crushed the Titans. I did not have that. The Vikings edged the Jets. The Cowboys put up 33 meaningless points in the last 14 minutes to pound the Colts. Tony, which win was the most impressive to you?
Okay, so we're going to throw the Cowboys out first because they played a terrible team.
Yeah.
And it's important in the context of this question, who is your opposition? The Vikings I'm throwing out because, as you alluded to earlier, we both look at them as the least impressive 10-2 team we have ever seen.
Probably ever.
And they barely beat the Jets with a third-string quarterback. So now it becomes the Eagles or the Bengals. The Eagles look great against the Titans, but let's ask ourselves, how good are the Titans at the moment?
Still pretty good.
They have lost 2 games in a row, I believe. Well, wait, let me give you a statistic here.
Okay.
They have only beaten 1 team all year that has a winning record. So for me, it's the Bengals.
Yep.
Because they beat the best team.
Yep.
Kansas City was the best team of these 4 teams. This is the 3rd time in a row, I believe, that Joe Burrow has beaten Patrick Mahomes, and he came down the stretch, had 2 scoring drives in the 4th quarter, including the game winner on a touchdown pass. To me, Mike, that was, and here's the word that I wrote down, that was the most consequential game in the NFL yesterday.
Yeah. One of the things I hate on whatever network it's on, it's probably on this one too, is statement statement Saturday, statement Sunday, statement week. It's just nonsensical hype that people should be fired for coming up with. Having said that,
You fire everybody. You fire half of Bristol.
Well, not just Bristol. Los Angeles, New York, all the capitals of broadcast. Tony, I thought it was a statement win for the Bengals yesterday. That they needed that. They needed that.
Yeah.
And by the way, and Patrick Mahomes was not great on any level yesterday because there were constantly receivers open underneath it. He was like, no, I don't want that. I want to be Aaron Judge today. I want to hit home runs. I just want to throw it 50 yards down. It feels like there's a dude open 16 yards in front of you. What? So he'll be fine. I'm not going to be overly critical of Patrick Mahomes. He had a game that wasn't great.
Oh, no.
But
He's great.
Burrow and those guys, Tone, when he has his weapons out there, they are, listen to me, I can't believe I'm saying this. I don't trust them historically. They're as good as Kansas City. They're as good as the Chiefs when he has all his weapons to deploy.
I agree with you. I do every week. I do my MVP ballot, my imaginary MVP ballot, and I've had Jalen Hurts #1 for a long time, and I still do.
Right.
He threw for 380 yards yesterday, I believe. But I knocked Tua down a couple of pegs, and my 2 right now is Joe Burrow, and my 3 right now is Dak Prescott.
Okay.
Yep. Because they have real impact on their teams. Real impact. Let's go to college football. TCU and USC both lost over the weekend. USC got drilled by Utah. They fell from number 4 to number 10. TCU lost in overtime to Kansas State, but held on to the 3 spot. So the top 4 are Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and Ohio State. Wilbon, do you see these as the correct 4, and do you see this as a competitive playoff?
Well, there's no controversy. I mean, nobody got left out. Nobody got hosed. Nobody has a complaint. That's the only 4. This is the correct 4, period. Now, do I see it as competitive? Probably. I think I do. I mean, you're wondering about TCU all the time. You're wondering whether TCU can step up and play with the Power Fives, the big boys. Are they ready for this? And sometimes that team, that mid-major, is not. I think TCU is, although, Tony, you love TCU. I like them because I like anybody wearing purple. But, we were on the phone when this game was going down on Saturday, and I knew how impressed you were with the way TCU handled that important drive to get them. But, Tone, they didn't win the game. They were outplayed essentially twice by Kansas State. Speaking of teams wearing purple.
Okay.
Twice.
So let me get to this. First of all, TCU is in the Power 5. They're in the Big 12. Yeah. They are a Power 5 school. Second of all, I called you while that game was going on, and I told you TCU would remain in the top 4 even if they lost. And you were afraid Alabama would get it.
I was.
Okay. And anyway, now it's a little fishy that they're in 3rd because what that means is the committee said, I don't want Ohio State to play Michigan in the semis. We just saw that. If they make the finals, okay, but not in the semis.
Right.
And I texted you about Max Duggan, and I said on that last drive alone, he just won the Heisman. And let me tell you what he did. All right, on that last drive, he runs for 13. He runs for 19. He passes for 20. Some other guy runs for a little bit. He runs for 40, and then he runs for 8, and only 8 because that got him into the touchdown. He carried his team on his back. Then he threw the 2-point conversion, and it got him into the overtime. I wanted them to win in the overtime. I actually thought Duggan got into the end zone in the overtime. Will this thing be a competitive playoff, Mike? It depends on one thing. Is Georgia this good?
Yeah.
Because Georgia's won like 27 or 28
2 years
in the
two-year
SEC.
roll.
Yeah.
It's
So
like
if
one of
they're
those
this
old Nebraska things in the mid-70s.
you're not going to beat them.
Tony,
That's
I'm
right.
with you on this. By the way, the most exciting game of the weekend we didn't mention and it was eventful because it changed the Final Four. And that was USC losing and giving up 40 again to Utah.
That's right.
And it was just sabotage my man Caleb Williams because early, Tony, in that game, he had thrown 3 touchdowns, right? And I know he threw the last pick and it was dreadful. But, Tony, he was so great with a popped hamstring.
Understand.
I know he may not win the Heisman, but he made himself a lot of money on Sunday. A lot of money on Sunday, Caleb made himself.
Duggan, in the most critical part of a critical game, Duggan went down the field by himself. And he was gasping for air. Let's take a break. Coming up, who are the Commanders? Should the Commanders or the Giants feel better about their tie? Who are the Commanders?
Yeah, we don't know.
What?
Justin Verlander picks the team he'll pitch for next season. You went crazy over Duggan because you watched it, because you were awake.
I did. I watched it. Hopping with the peeps. I like that phrase.
Mail time.
The first one. Here we go. Bigger signing of the day. The Mets signing Justin Verlander or the Phillies signing Trey Turner?
Verlander. Verlander. Tone, Verlander's coming off a year that most people would consider a career year, and it wasn't necessarily for him. I mean, Verlander was under 2 with an ERA, and now he teams up with an old teammate, an old tag team partner, Max Scherzer, for the Mets. You know how I hate the Mets. I hate Verlander, who I like a lot, going to that team. And Trey Turner's great. He's going to Philly every day. I mean, it's a great signing for Philly, but when you can put Verlander and Scherzer out there, come on, man, that's intimidating.
Yeah.
And DeGrom went to Texas, making that available. I'm going to go with having that ace, a second ace on that staff in New York.
Yeah, Verlander and Scherzer, they're old, they're great, and they are really rich at the moment. And they can come and co-host the PTI show because we've had them both as guests. The answer is Verlander in the short term.
Yep.
Because he's coming off a spectacular year.
All that matters.
And the Tommy John surgery where he laid out for a year may allow him to pitch 3 more years. You know, because he's rested.
At least 2 more.
But in the long term, it's Turner. And let me just say this. I bleed for this as a Nats fan. He goes in division to Philadelphia. He joins Bryce Harper. This is part of the core of the team that I rooted for in Washington. They're going to be together for about 8 years. They're going to win stuff, and he's going to be 100 miles away from where I live. And honestly, if you're a Nats fan, this is a very painful thing. It's not painful if Anthony Rendon goes to California. It's not. It's painful when a guy that you think is great, who you should never have traded,
It's a lot
goes
of
100
great
miles
players
away.
elsewhere.
Long term, it's Turner.
Yeah, a lot of great
Short
players.
term,
Short term
it's
is all that
Verlander.
matters in sports today, unless your name is Wimbayama.
Should the Commanders or the Commodores or the Commandos, whatever their name is, should the Commanders or the Giants feel worse about the tie?
They both ought to feel bad because they both sort of played to tie. It was uninspired. I was upset that I had the third TV, upper left, on this junk. And they had some moments now. I mean, I thought I picked the Giants to win coming off a couple of bad weeks, and I thought the Giants need to win this game to get it right. And the Commanders sort of outplayed them. But then, you know, Ron Rivera had a couple of 4th downs. So did the Giants, by the way. And they didn't do it.
They did.
They punted.
No.
They wouldn't go for it. They wouldn't commit to going for it. I don't want to be like Brandon Staley or whatever his name is. But come on. Uninspired football on both of their parts.
In the overtime, I totally agree with that. Let me explain the situation. It's worse for Washington because they're on the outside of the playoffs right now.
Okay.
And the Giants are in. But the Giants have to play the Eagles this week, which looks probably like a loss.
Yeah, but
if it is a
Redskins
loss, then they're both going to be
again.
7-5-1, heading into Washington for the showdown game. The winner of that game will get in, and the loser will likely be out.
Maybe.
But you're right.
Like them both out.
The overtime was bad. Do you think Deion Sanders will be able to elevate Colorado's sorry football program?
Yeah, the way you elevate now, we just saw this with USC, right? And the coach going from Oklahoma to Southern California. When you're dynamic, and Deion, my God, is dynamic, you can recruit and you go to the transfer portal and you say, I like him, and him. And you take them to Colorado and you load up. Look, they don't have any rules. We talked about Auburn the other day. Do you think Colorado's got any rules? They have none. All right? Deion's going to be able to go there and get whoever he wants, whenever he wants, and he can coach them. We know that from Jackson State. And by the way, you think some people aren't going from Mississippi, Jackson State, with him to Colorado? Because they are. So Deion, yes, he will get this turned around, and I don't think it's going to take all that long.
So I was shocked when he took the Colorado job.
Why?
Colorado stinks as a program.
Okay.
Colorado was 1-11 this year. They haven't had a winning season, I don't believe, since 2004. I didn't see the allure for Deion in Colorado that I would see, for example, in the Big 12 because of the Cowboys, in the ACC because of Florida State, in the SEC because of his time with the Falcons. But you know what he said to his players, his actual players that he inherited? He said, jump in the portal. He said, get out of my sight. If you don't want to be here, if you're on the bubble, into the transfer portal. Oh, my. Yeah. I mean, so he must have enormous plans. He must have a lot of confidence. He's a confident man. But, Mike, I was surprised he took Colorado.
No.
I was.
You go take a job in one of the alleged Power Fives, even though between Stanford and Cal and Washington, two of those will probably be out of there.
They're in a bad fit in the Pac-12. That's a bad fit for Colorado.
This is a big state school where they've won in football before. Okay. It matters. You're in the West. He can recruit from California, from Texas, from Arizona.
We'll see.
He can, Tony, he can and he will. Come on now, this is not a bad job. This is a tremendous job for him.
Imagine being a player meeting your new coach for the first time and he says, jump in the portal, son.
Either
get out of my
better
sight.
or get out.
Let's take one last break. Still to come, how should the U.S. men's soccer team feel about their World Cup performance?
Maybe they should have watched Brazil today. And a Clemson quarterback decides to move on, speaking of the transfer portal. You think he might not?
Happy time, people. Happy 75th birthday, Jim Plunkett. Plunkett is the definition of resilience. After winning the Heisman at Stanford and being the #1 overall pick by New England in 1970, Plunkett wasn't much there and was traded to the 49ers, who eventually released him. He went to Oakland as a backup for 2 seasons. And then in 1980, Dan Pastorini fractured his leg. Plunkett came in off the bench and immediately threw 5 picks. But Oakland stuck with him. The Raiders won 9 of 11. They made the playoffs, and they ultimately won the Super Bowl over Philadelphia, and Plunkett was named MVP. 3 years later, Plunkett was backing up Mark Wilson. Got the starting job back, went 10-3, and won another Super Bowl. His numbers are mediocre. A 72-72 record, 164 touchdowns, 198 interceptions. But he's got 2 Super Bowl victories.
Yeah, his numbers might be mediocre, but his impact wasn't. The thing I hate about sports the most these days for people covering it and assessing it is they don't know how to look at the action and figure out impact. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. Just like Tom Flores, who had 2 as a coach, belongs much earlier. Jim Plunkett belongs in the Hall, period.
Happy anniversary, Klay Thompson. On this day 6 years ago. The other Splash Brothers scored 60 points in 29 minutes using just 11 dribbles. I don't know who thought to count the dribbles. Maybe that's some new analytic. But this means Thompson basically caught and shot his way to 60 points like some sort of Papa-Shot act. Thompson holds a couple of wild NBA records. He has 14 three-pointers in one game, which he did in 3 quarters, and 37 points in 1 quarter.
Yeah.
There have been many great backcourts in the NBA, like Frazier and Monroe on the Knicks, Isaiah and Dumars on the Pistons, Hardaway and Richmond on the Warriors. There has never, ever been as good a backcourt as Thompson and Curry.
Tony, you know I'm not going to disagree with you. Those 11 dribbles, it shows that Klay Thompson can score 60 or 37 and a quarter and not be a ball hog. He doesn't need to have that, but when he gets it, he knows what the hell to do with it. And the Warriors are getting better. They're getting better and better and better, and Klay is still improving coming off those massive injuries. Good for him. Watch the game. You know we're not close to the Dutch. We're not, in terms of talent, we're not there. I don't care how many people write how, oh my God, it's going to be glorious in 4 years. Maybe, but we're not as good. And if you think they're the best, they're not, because Brazil today scored 3 goals that are like watching, if you want to put it in American terms, the Harlem Globetrotters against the Washington Generals. That's how beautiful the play is. We're not in that category, no matter who tells you that. We're not. Not yet. We may get there, but not doubtful in 4 years.
Let's go to the big finish.
Let's do it.
Fred McGriff, voted into the Hall of Fame by the Contemporary Era Committee. Is that all right with you?
Yes, it is, Tony. And the power numbers are there, 493 home runs. I know he might be borderline in, but I'm fine with McGriff being in. Talk about the guy who's at the center of a lot of action. The Raiders beat the Chargers for Vegas' 3rd win in a row. Is that significant to you?
Well, it's certainly significant for Josh McDaniels, who had a terrible start, and people were saying, are they going to get rid of Josh McDaniels? I mean, it proves they're on the right track. You know, they won 2 of those games in overtime, I think. The Athletic reports that Trae Young missed Friday's game after tensions with head coach Nate McMillan. What do you make of that?
One of his options presented by Coach Nate was to not show up. If you were going to participate in shoot-around right then, he didn't. Can't win without both of them on the same page, as they say. Clemson quarterback DJ Uiagalelei, maybe I got that right, is expected to enter the transfer portal. Are you surprised?
They got a kid backing him up, Cade Klubnik, who's very good. This was a bad year for Clemson. I'm not really surprised. Last one, Anthony Davis, had 55 and 17 in a win over the Wizards. Got MVP chance in D.C. Really? Are you impressed?
Last 9 games, Tony, he's been like a combination of Shaq and Kobe AD has, and the Lakers are better. They are. He's been playing fabulously.
Okay, they're better, but are they any good? We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
Say it with me, Uiagalelei. I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, Knucklehead.